You're listening to the Second Look podcast, where we take a closer look at what we're learning each Sunday at Connection Church to help you grow in your walk with Christ. Here are your hosts, Pastor Joe Terreri and Pastor Dan DeRochers.
Welcome to the Second Look. My name is Dan.
And my name is Andrew.
And we're here talking about sonship. But first, hey, Andrew.
Hey, Dan.
You're not Joe.
I'm not at all.
Well, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you today. Andrew, I have a question for you today.
Okay.
I imagine when you were younger, you did some things. I mean, I happen to know a couple of the things that you did when you were, and I'm just wondering, like, what was one of the maybe crazy or reckless, or maybe what's a thing that you got in trouble for when you were a kid or a teenager?
Well, my parents, who go to Connection Church, and I love them deeply, they were
Sounds like you're about to say something bad right
Yes, I am, of course. That's what you want to know. They didn't let me go off with my friends a lot and have a lot of experiences. And one time, I slept over my friend's house, and we decided we were going to go to the Statue of Liberty and New York City the next day. And I was probably 16, maybe a little bit younger than that. And I had some friends who were older who could drive. And I woke up Saturday morning and we're driving towards New York City, somehow up 100 going towards Walmart. And I called my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, we're going to New York City today." And she said, "No, you're not." And I said, "Well, Mom, I'm already on my way." And my friend's sister grabbed the phone. She said, "Hey, it'll be okay." And my mom said, "Drop him off at Walmart. I'm coming to pick him up."
No way.
Yes. Somehow she was able to convince my mom to let me go, and I ended up going to New York City with, I would say, rather responsible people, but I almost got orphaned at Walmart.
That's hilarious. I didn't think that's where you were going to go. I thought it was going to be more of a stealing traffic sign situation.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of, just dumb mistakes, I guess, when I was a kid. Like, I remember once my parents redid our basement, like kind of culminating in my sister's 16th birthday. So I would have been 12 at the time. So it was sometime in that time frame. I was eating a snack downstairs, brand new Berber carpet, and I dropped an entire glass of cranberry juice on the Berber carpet. And it was harrowing. And I don't ever think it fully recovered.
Did you try to cover it up? What were you thinking in that moment with your parents?
Every cleaning product known to man was going on this thing. But that carpet was kind of doomed because we had a wood stove in the basement. And I can think of multiple times where I accidentally flung a burning hot ember onto and melted some of the Berber carpet.
Oh, so not burning down your house, but just ruining your parents' dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I think that, the carpet made it all the way until they sold their house. They were in the house for 39 years.
Wow.
And sold a couple years ago.
So someone else has inherited your mistakes.
Oh, no, I take that back. They did replace the carpet in the basement at some time in the last 5 or so years. So no, it did get ripped out. There was one other time, and I was in high school, and I could drive, and I was making a video with some friends for, I think it was for our Spanish class, and we buzzed in we were shooting a scene somewhere, and we were in my room. I think I was maybe putting some of the footage on my computer. This is the very beginnings of computer video editing. And I looked out the window. I think actually my mom might have screamed. And I looked out the window, and my car was backing itself down the driveway. I had left it in neutral as a manual transmission.
Dan.
I had left it in neutral, forgot to put the emergency brake on, and it tootled down the driveway. It took forever for it to get, but it was, it was fast enough to hit the tree and dent the trunk.
Oh, man, Dan.
Yep.
Was this your car or your parents' car?
No, it was my parents' car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was not my car.
No.
It became my car, and then it actually became my dad's car again when he let me borrow one of his other cars. I had really good parents, and I know you had really good parents.
I did.
And for all of the mistakes that we made as kids, our parents loved us. They tolerated us. But I just think about moments where I had really bad attitude, or things that I have done throughout my life, and even things that my kids do. We had a moment this morning with one of our kids, and it was like, what is actually happening right now?
I call that Monday. Dan.
But, I think about those moments, and I try to go over in my mind what happened. I don't know that there's ever been a moment through all the junk that I've done in my life that I've ever wondered, oh, do my parents love me? And I hope for my kids that they don't rehearse and go over the stuff that's happened in their life. Like Joe joked yesterday, you'll talk to your therapist about this, But I hope there's not a moment in my kid's life where they're like, oh yeah, I wondered if my parents loved me.
Yeah, I tell my kids I'm always going to love you. Even if you murder someone.
Which is pretty extreme, right?
Which is very extreme, which is kind of like you're doing the worst thing and I got this from someone else. I'll still love you. I may pay for a lawyer for you, but for sure I will still love you. And just trying to give them the most extreme and not encouraging anything like that, but to tell them there's nothing you can do to get away from my love. And I hope that's true. I believe that's true, Dan. Haven't been through the worst, but I love my kids and I want them to know that.
Yeah, and so when we talk about our identity as it comes to sonship through Jesus Christ, sonship of the Father, and this is not a gender thing, right? This is kind of the position as a son. We don't have to wonder if God loves us, right?
No. And growing up, I grew up in a religious house by God's grace. I think you did too.
Yep.
And sometimes growing up that way, God loves you. And it's almost like, he feels obligated to love you, but you're not always sure he likes you.
Yeah.
And you put it in your mind that when you sin or when you mess up, it's like God's angry with you or upset with you, and you don't quite have the same position. And I don't know if this has been your experience, Dan, but when I was younger, if I sinned, I wouldn't turn to God immediately because I would say, I have to get myself right again.
For sure. I think we all think that, right? Or sometimes I think about some moments in the lives of people that I love dearly that were living in a pattern of sin and knew in their heads what their identity should be, but had the thought, well, I've gone too far. I've done too much. I can't receive that again. But it's that achieve versus receive thing, right?
It really is.
If we think we can do something that can bring that identity back, we're missing the mark. We're missing the point.
We're missing it. And God's not looking for achievement. He told Jesus, right? He said, this is my son that I love and I'm well pleased with you. Love what Joe said. Before Jesus did a single thing.
Yeah. That's huge.
Man.
That's huge.
We need to get that deep inside of us because so many of us are looking to achieve our identity. And even while Joe was preaching, there's times in my life where I struggle with a fear of failure. And the Lord was speaking to me while Joe was preaching. And he said to me, if you can't achieve your identity, why do you think failure is going to destroy your identity? And I'm like, if I can't achieve it, then failure can't define it either.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about some of those kind of definitions of identity that we heard about yesterday. Honestly, that list was really eye-opening for me because I had a conversation with someone last week, actually, and we talked about this conversation. Someone asked me the question, what are you doing to maximize your mist, right? Yeah. If life is a vapor, if life is a mist, what are you doing to maximize your mist? And I was reflecting on that with another friend, and we were talking about what I do for work, right? And he asked me something to the effect of, well, what does that mean as the executive pastor of Connection Church? And when he said that, I actually was like, no, that's not my identity, right? And there wasn't a way that I could put it into words of like, no, when someone asks me who are, and part of it is around like, if this is therapy. I don't know how to define myself. I don't have one thing. And I kind of said that, and that was where this friend was like, well, you're the executive pastor of Connection Church. I'm like, yeah, but that's not my thing. And for my entire life, I have wanted to have a thing.
Yeah.
But I've really had to come to grips with the fact that God didn't make me that way, even when it comes to music, right? I'm not a guitarist or a singer or a drummer. Like, none of those things are my musical identity. I'm kind of a generalist.
Yeah.
And so when we look at this list of identity, I think we can all think of the profile of person, and maybe we can put ourselves in that profile by looking at this. Because like when we think about some people, right, performance, I am what I accomplish.
Yeah, right. When you're successful, then you say, oh, wow, I'm great. I'm good. Right. And when you're not successful, if that's what identifies you, then your identity goes down like this. And it just keeps going up and down based on your last performance review.
Sure.
Right.
Or award.
Or lack of award. Or
that's why people say Grammy nominee. Right. And not Grammy award winner.
Yes.
But both of those things would be performance-based identity. Right.
Yeah.
And you see people that go down this path and maybe try to achieve the next award.
Well, I think you find people get into a midlife crisis because they've built themselves up and they've become successful and they've done all these things. And then they're asking themselves, why hasn't this brought meaning? Now I need to find something to identify myself with that's different from this because this identity didn't hold me up.
Yeah.
That's where we land, and Dan, we're not, I don't know what midlife is, right? But
we're getting close.
But we're getting close, and it's usually a fear in looking back and saying, okay, I achieved this, but it still hasn't fulfilled me. And so performance can't be your identity.
Yeah, profession. I am what I do, right? And I think a lot of maybe high-performing people as well, but it doesn't have to be either.
No.
Right? You can still really identify with what you do. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing to identify with what you do, but to build your identity on what you do is tricky because what happens if you can't or when you don't do that anymore?
Well, right. Maybe you retire and then you're like, oh, I'm no longer that. Or think about professional sports players, right? They're known for this and then they get an injury and then who am I?
Yep.
But all of us are in that situation, right? What if the company we work for shuts down?
Yeah.
Right? And we're like, oh, I don't do that anymore. I can't do that. But I've been trying to get away from asking little kids this question. Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because what I'm telling them, whenever I ask them, what do you want to be is, hey, whatever you do for work is who you are.
Do you know what I ask college students? What are you good at that people will pay you cash dollars to do?
Yes, Dan. Dan, that's a great question, right? And you're actually reinforcing that your identity is not in what you do, but right when you're 5, you want to be an army man, or you want to be
these days
right?
it's YouTuber.
Oh yeah, YouTuber or a professional gamer or whatever it is, and then you're like, that's not who I am.
Yeah, possessions. I am what I own. Right? And this doesn't have to be people that are just car people or multiple home people, right? This can be a type of collection. This, honestly, like this and appearance, Harley people.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
And we had this conversation last week. Everyone is looking for community. And part of that community is identity. And sometimes that community/identity is found in things and in appearance.
Oh, yeah, and I would say appearance is one of the, especially in the era of social media.
Yeah.
Right, and you just look at people, and maybe you stay on their post longer if they look good or if they don't look good. Like my wife enjoys Hallmark movies. Okay, but But we were watching one Hallmark movie one day, and she was like, "Well, I don't want to watch this anymore." I was like, and she's like, "Cause that guy's not attractive," and she's like, "I don't want to watch this." And she's not a shallow person by any means, but that was just a light bulb in my mind where like, oh, this is more than just about a sappy story.
Yeah.
And then right as I scroll through YouTube once in a while, and I'm looking for a workout video or whatever, there's a guy who goes around and interviews people who look jacked or who look very in shape, and he kind of asks them 30 seconds on how they work out, what they eat, all this stuff. He has millions and millions and millions of views on a minute-long clip because people are saying, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to define me, is my appearance.
And yet, in Christ, to God, we have the most incredible, radical identity shift. Right? And it transforms how God sees us, how we see him, and how we see ourselves. Because part of that identity is how other people see us, but part of it is how we see ourselves.
Yeah.
So how does being a child of God transform your identity, Andrew?
It stops it from externalizing it to other people, because I can live for other people's approval, right? I can put it on my performance. Like I'm just as prone as everyone else to fall into these traps. And I have to continue to tell myself the truth to say, oh, I'm loved and God is happy with me and pleased with me. And even this morning, Dan, I was just spending time with the Lord, and I was just kind of just spending time in silence, but a breath prayer of just saying, God, you're my Father and I'm your son. And you're my Father, and I'm your son. And trying to help myself just continually lean into the fact that, oh, I'm loved, not I have to go and get love or have to do things to be loved. And if I'm not, then I'm nothing or I'm worthless. And it really is a grounding place for me to say, oh, I don't have to live with fear or worry because I'm loved. And that's really the difference it makes in my life. Is I can get anxious, or I can say, oh, you know what? Today I'm loved, regardless of what I've accomplished yesterday or can do today, or regardless of what anyone else thinks about me.
Let me talk about spending time with the Lord. Sometimes we can feel like, okay, I need to read this much scripture. I need to pray. I'm not good at praying. I don't know what to say. And we can sort of, because there are spiritual practices, there are spiritual disciplines. What you just described is sort of like spiritual being rather than spiritual doing.
Oh.
And I was just like imagining you sitting there with the Lord with that, what you called a breath prayer. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about like, okay, sometimes we feel like we're going into something with a list or with a notebook, and sometimes we just can sit on the couch and watch TV with Dad, or our kids can sit on the couch and watch TV with Dad, and it's not like we're not sitting face to face to discuss something. We're sitting side by side. And I'm just wondering about your reflection on that, as you sort of, sometimes you're sitting face to face with the Lord, but other times you're sitting side by side.
Yeah, and just instead of trying to achieve something, I know we keep going back to that, but instead of trying to achieve something with the Lord, like I finished my reading, I prayed, I brought all my requests, I actually think what our soul needs is to know that we're loved and just to be with the Lord and just to be present with him. Because after all, this is not a religion where we need to achieve something. It's a relationship where we need to be in community with someone. And I have all these thoughts in my head, Dan, like all the time, just running. I get distracted, right? When I pray, I often get distracted and have to come back. When I sit there, even when I'm saying, God, you're my Father and I'm your son, my thoughts go other places and I need to keep bringing myself back to that. But my soul needs space with the Lord where I'm just present with him, not trying to do anything, but just say, Lord, here I am. And usually in that time is when I hear his voice most clearly.
So how do you reconcile if there are some of those crazy things? right? Some of those things in your life that you're like, man, I've got things that are separating me in that moment. Like, how do you get there? Because like we can receive, right? Our identity is not it's not affected by things that we did the previous day or those kind of things, but there still can be things that, at least even inside of our mind, are separating us from that intimate communion. So how do you deal with those things, Andrew?
Yeah, I have to keep telling myself the gospel over and over again. And I know that sounds weird because it's sometimes the gospel can be like, yep, Jesus died for my sins and he rose again and I'm free or I'm going to go to heaven. But the preaching the gospel to yourself is really saying, hey, I'm deeply flawed and I can be okay with that. And I'm deeply loved at the same time because of what Christ did for me. So you're not trying to push what you did away and say like, well, that didn't happen. You're like, no. I'm deeply flawed. And at the same time, I am deeply loved. And instead of it being a seesaw, right? If it's based on our performance or based on what we did, you're like, man, I'm terrible, or I'm doing great, I'm terrible, I'm doing great. It's actually balanced out like, yeah, I didn't get it right all the time. And yet I have a Father who's looking down at me and saying, you're loved, and I'm actually pleased with you.
And if you do it wrong, he's going to drop you off at Walmart on your way to the Statue of Liberty. Just kidding, that's not going to happen. That was just Andrew's mom.
That was just my mom.
But that was amazing that she actually let you go.
Yeah, it was great. And we had a wonderful time.
And the girl that convinced her is now a defense attorney. Well, this has been another episode, I don't actually know that, of The Second Look. You can catch this sermon and much more at our website, cometoconnect.com. Have a great week.